special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has been splashing the cash with billions of pounds going to defence, the NHS and housing. Who is going to be paying for this? It will be you, the British taxpayer. We have a deal in Gibraltar. Is this yet another surrender to a foreign power, or will this deal finally fix one of Brexit's trickier border problems? I'll be giving my view. The government is set to abolish the 200-year-old Vagrancy Act and decriminalise rough sleeping. I'll be asking why the government's approach to tackling crime is to decriminalise offences. Billionaire Elon Musk has climbed down and apologised for his posts about President Trump, which he now admits went too far. Have these bickering billionaires learnt the lessons from the Reform Party? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my particularly formidable panel, the former Reform Press spokesman, Gawain Towler, and the former Labour advisor, Stella Santaquito. As always, let me know your views. You know where to send it, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories. We are renewing Britain and ensuring working people are better off. That was the Chancellor's message as she delivered her spending review, pledging a £190 billion boost to the day-to-day running of public services. Rachel Reeves announced funding increases for transport networks, defence capabilities and energy security, as well as ending the use of asylum hotels by 2029 through new funding to tackle the backlog. NHS funding will rise by 3% a year in real terms, and the Chancellor also extended the £3 bus fare cap to 2027. The Chancellor also announced a £39 billion house building boost and £7 billion for 14,000 prison placements. The UK has agreed to a fluid border between Gibraltar and Spain, clearing the way to finalise a post-Brexit deal on the territory with the EU. Under the agreement, checks will not be required on people crossing the border. There will be dual border control checks for arrivals by air at Gibraltar Airport, carried out by Gibraltar and Spanish officials. President of the EU Commission Ursula von der Leyen welcomed the deal, calling it an historic agreement. Talks on rules governing the border of Spain and Gibraltar have been ongoing since Britain left the EU in 2020. Foreign Secretary David Lammy said the agreement was a breakthrough after years of uncertainty and that the UK's commitment to Gibraltar remains as solid as the rock itself.
Well, I'm delighted that today we have reached a historic solution that I believe is pragmatic and gives the people of Gibraltar the certainty they need for their sovereignty and their prosperity over the years ahead. This is a good arrangement that deals with the complexity of the current arrangements that mean that people have sometimes queued for hours and has harmed the certainty that business needs.
In other news, 6 people have been arrested and 32 police officers injured following a second night of violent disorder in Ballymena in Northern Ireland. One of those arrested has been charged. There are reports that multiple cars and properties were set on fire as rioters threw petrol bombs, fireworks and masonry at police officers. The scenes last night came after similar violent disorder in the town on Monday night, which followed an earlier peaceful protest which was organised in support of the family of a girl who was the victim of an alleged sexual assault. 2 14-year-old boys appeared in court on Monday charged with attempted rape. And Brian Wilson, the co-founder and primary songwriter of the Beach Boys, has died, his family's announced. He helped pioneer the studio as instrument, influencing generations of musicians in pop and beyond. It was revealed in early 2024 that he was living with a neurocognitive disorder akin to dementia. Wilson was 82 years old. In a statement published on his website, his family said, "We're heartbroken to announce that our beloved father, Brian Wilson's passed away. We're at loss for words right now." Rolling Stone Ronnie Wood says he's in mourning. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in an hour. Now it's back to Jacob.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Rachel Reeves unveiled her long-awaited spending review this afternoon, and the cash, your cash, got splashed.
Defence spending will now rise to 2.6% of GDP by April 2027, to £280 million more per year by the end of the spending review for our new border security commands. We will be ending the costly use of hotels to house asylum seekers, an extra £29 billion per year for the day-to-day running of our health service.
Bold stuff indeed. An £11 billion uplift for defence, a whopping additional £29 billion for the NHS and £39 billion extra for housing and for nuclear power. Have we reached the new Jerusalem? Well, perhaps you'd ask me after the budget in the autumn, when we will know where all this money is coming from. But really, we don't need to wait for the ABR to realise it will be you, the taxpayer. Forgive my pessimism, but our current Chancellor's record isn't much to write home about. Just look at what's happened to the economy under this socialist government. Inflation has jumped from 2.2% to 3.5%, eroding the value of the cash you have in the bank and seeing the prices of goods rise. Unemployment is currently at 4.6%, which is the highest level for 4 years, with at least 250,000 people losing their jobs since last autumn's budget. Well, who could have guessed that making it more expensive for companies to employ people would mean that fewer people would be employed? The national debt has risen to a frightening level. The debt-to-GDP ratio is now at 95.5% and rising. This is unsustainable at the best of times, and alas, we do not find ourselves in the best of times. Borrowing costs are rising. In the last financial year, we spent 8.2% of our national income on debt interest spending. Not debt repayment, paying interest on that debt. Imagine if you knew someone who was spending 8% of what they earned paying the interest off on their credit cards. You'd be advising them to take some responsibility and seek good financial advice pretty quickly. It's worth reiterating the basic laws of economics. The government does not generate any money of its own. It takes money off the population in the form of taxation, and it can borrow money from the financial markets. Borrowing from the markets is delayed taxation in terms Ricardo established, Ricardian equivalence. Borrowing is simply delayed taxation. So, if we want a state that can afford to pay for the nation's needs and wants, the only way to achieve that is the same as it has always been, through economic growth. And this requires targeted deregulation, tax cuts, a thriving private sector, trust in people to spend their own money because they tend to spend it better than the government spends it for them, and cutting back on bloated, overfed, fat government bodies. Let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. There's one person who's a friend of the programme, comes on very regularly, who will probably disagree with me, the former chief economist at the Cabinet Office, Jonathan Portes. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining me. What I really want to know is, where's this £190 billion going to come from? And isn't the Chancellor failing to admit that the country is facing a real problem in terms of its public finances?
You're certainly right that the country faces a real problem in terms of its public finances. To be fair to the Chancellor, she has said that consistently for the last year when she's talked about both what she inherited from the previous government and about her fiscal rules, which I think are broadly sensible, that the current balance, the budget should be balanced on a current basis. Most economists would agree that's a pretty sensible rule to have, and she's been pretty consistent in saying she'll stick to it. In terms of where the money is coming from, remember, a lot of this money is for investment, and I think most economists again will agree it's quite sensible for you to borrow for a long-term investment. And so when you said, you wouldn't want to have spend that much of your income on your credit card, Well, that's the wrong analogy, isn't it? The right analogy is how much you spend on your mortgage in terms of long-term investment, and it's not at all unusual to spend 8% of your income on your mortgage. So I think we should get that straight. I would say,
but John, let's come to this word investment, because Gordon Brown basically decided that all government spending was investment and started calling it investment. And there's a lot of confusion, in my view, as to what is investment and what isn't. So some things clearly are. Building a new road is investment. Putting an extra £29 billion into the National Health Service is day-to-day spending.
Correct.
You then get to more difficult things like a new nuclear power station. If the government's putting in whatever it is, £17 billion, but that is not an economic investment, and it's not an investment the private sector would make, then part of it may be investment, but the other part of it is subsidy, which is spending. And therefore, we get a Chancellor who wraps up a lot of spending as if it were investment. And then you are funding off your credit card rather than your mortgage.
Well, I think we should be careful about this. It's true that Gordon Brown and indeed Rachel Reeves describe lots of things investment which aren't, but they don't count as investment for the purposes of the fiscal rule or in the documents that are published today, because what's investment for the purposes of the fiscal rule is defined by the Office of National Statistics, which is independent, which in turn follows international standards. So that portion of the money which is going to actually construct a nuclear power plant will indeed correctly be classified as investment. To the extent it's subsidy for day-to-day to consumers for paying the price of uneconomic electricity, that would eventually be current spending, but that is not what we're talking about here. And I should note that it's not a question of whether it generates a direct return for the exchequer. Remember, we don't charge people to drive on roads. Maybe we should.
No, I understand that.
But it's still investment.
I see that spending on roads is investment because there is a clear economic return. But if you take some government expenditure that is classified investment under the terms you've set out, actually it doesn't provide an economic return. It provides a loss and is not something the private sector would do. And this seems to me to make it too easy for governments actually to keep on spending more money than they're taking in. And today, we're going to see continued excess spending, and we're already at nearly 100% of debt to GDP.
Well, the debt to GDP ratio is pretty much what it's been. If you look at the chart for the debt to GDP ratio, it's really hardly changed in the last 5 years. So it went up a lot because of the financial crisis, and it went up a lot because of the pandemic. Apart from that, if you look at it, it's pretty flat. And of course, the government's fiscal rule, which again, Rachel Reeves has been very clear about, is to stabilize it. So in these plans, and if we accept, and I agree with you, will the plans actually materialize as they are set out? That's a big question. But the plans that she set out today, which are consistent with the UBR, show her meeting her fiscal rules and show that debt to GDP ratio stabilizing. So there is no sense in which, in any economic sense, what we've seen today is in any sense unsustainable. That's just not a correct description.
It seems to me to be completely reckless that we could get through the financial crisis and we could get through COVID because we had robust balance sheets. And that was because we had an extended period of economic growth up until 2008, I would argue mainly thanks to the Thatcher-Lawson reforms, you might put it differently. And we were then able to do it for COVID because George Osborne had stabilised the public finances by a programme of austerity. But we're now suggesting that keeping levels near 100% of GDP is fine, but that leaves absolutely no room for the next financial crisis that will come along. And there will be one eventually.
I'm not sure what your basis for saying that is. You know what the debt to GDP ratio has been in Japan for the last 20 years, right?
Japan's very different. Japan, as you know perfectly well.
All countries are very different. But
Japan funds its JGBs through domestic saving, whereas our gilt market is funded by foreign investment. And this is a really important difference and is why Japan has been able to afford to have a 200% plus debt to GDP ratio. And you know that.
That is indeed one of the reasons. But there is absolutely nothing magic about 100% of GDP. And remember, George Osborne told us, on the basis of calculations we now know, of course, were the result of a basic arithmetic error, that there was some sort of ceiling at 90% of GDP. That, of course, turned out to be nonsense. We don't know what the ceiling is. It is certainly not prudent to keep on have it keep on rising indefinitely, and I would agree with that. But that is not what the plan suggests will happen. Now,
on that point of agreement, a happy agreement between us, which is perhaps rare, I'm going to pass over to my panel. Thank you as always for joining me. My panel, the former Reform Press spokesman Gawain Towler and the former Labour advisor Stella Santakidou. Gawain, what would Reform do? How would they get the finances under control?
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not going to pretend that I'm the great economist. I do think that what we've seen over the last year since the Labour came in is there was this 20 billion, the scare tactics over a 20 billion black hole that we've never actually found. And then to find an extra 190 billion spending seems to me the two sides of this balance don't add up. If that was so appalling, this cannot make sense. But looking at the spending plans as made, many of them are things that I think most people would like to see. They'd like to see increased spending on defence. This is absolutely the case. But as you introduced it, it's going to be the taxpayer who pays, and the taxpayer is already squeaking horribly. The taxes, the government inherited the highest peacetime taxes already. What's going to happen next? I dread to think.
I don't get how Rachel Reeves a year ago could say that £1.4 billion that was going to pensioners was absolutely essential to all her economic proposals. And then today she announced an expenditure of £190 billion. A year ago, either she was stupid or she was dishonest.
The spending review is just allocating the funds that we already know were going to be spent anyway. So it did not introduce any new taxes or anything else like that.
But there's new expenditure.
Which I was hoping to see. Well, she did some jiggling around. I do not agree with reinstating the winter fuel allowance. I do think that there should be more help for the poorest in our society, and that includes the poorest pensioners. And absolutely, there are pensioners who absolutely need support. But I don't think that it makes any sense to give financial assistance to people who may be, for example, on 35k a year, when we are not giving similar assistance to working families who will be on a lot less than that. I think that everybody who needs this assistance should be given it. I'm very pleased to see the investment, which I think is investment. I disagree with you, Jacob, on the semantics of what is or what is not, on what is and what is not investment, because it may be in economic terms that you do not want to classify it as investment. But the reason why the taxpayer is paying what they're paying right now is because for a very, very long time, the Conservative government was not willing to properly invest in the infrastructure, in our public utilities, in our public services. And what we have seen happen is this deterioration, this just only this putting a plaster on our public services and our infrastructure has led us to a point where our growth is completely stunted from what it could have been. And this is precisely because an economy cannot work properly if you have these massive waiting lists, if your transport system is not working appropriately, if your energy costs are skyrocketing.
Crucially, the NHS has got billions more year in, year out. Its productivity is 18% lower than it was in 2019. This means that £36 billion extra is spent in the NHS to see the same results. That's just waste.
I agree that the NHS, I agree, for example, that the welfare bill needs to come down. I agree that the NHS needs to increase its productivity. But the problem is that increasing productivity, more often than not, means that at the beginning you need to invest to see long-term results. And the OBR and the Treasury has, from government after government, not allow us to invest in a way that is going to have long-term gains.
OK, you describe this semantics about what investment means and what it doesn't mean. As an individual, as a citizen, as a normal human being, I spend on day-to-day and I invest on stuff that I expect to get a return. That's what it means. And to describe your day-to-day spending as investment is essentially being dishonest with the taxpayer and the general public. A little bit more honesty would be approved of.
Investing in nuclear, how is investing in nuclear power stations?
I'm saying that a lot of that is investment, but I would say a lot of the day-to-day spending, extra spending on the NHS is spending. And that's, you've got to be honest with people. That's all they expect.
I don't think that anybody said that the money that's...
Everything is investment these days, even when it's spending.
No, but as you said, people want to see the NHS waiting lists go down. It is a very big problem when it comes to getting the welfare bill down. The fact that people are are languishing on waiting lists and they're not able to go back into work, that is something that is an investment in the future of our economy.
All right. Well, we've let Stella have the last word. She's very welcome back on this programme. So thank you both, Jonathan and my panel. Shortly, is Gibraltar set to become the latest Brexit betrayal from this government of Remainers? Or is it time to reopen the Treaty of Utrecht? We'll be crossing over to Gibraltar in a moment.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Amy, how did you get into this beauty stuff?
It's a good story, actually. I moved here years ago. I married a lovely Scotsman, and I was acting for a while, and then I was producing. And while I was producing, I needed a part-time job, and I got a job presenting beauty products at QVC, the shopping channel. And I was given a hair removal device. And although we did millions of pounds of sellout shows, they were oftentimes returned. Not due to my bad selling, but simply because they didn't work or people didn't like the smell of burning hair. And I thought to myself, people want a dermaplaner. They don't want this 250-pound device. So at the time, I was bringing over these dermaplaners from America to the UK because I couldn't find them in store. And then I thought to myself, light bulb moment, let me start manufacturing them because I truly believe everyone needs a dermaplaner in their routine.
A dermaplaner, that's the future.
Dermaplaner.
But you're from America, the US.
Yes, I'm from New York originally.
And, don't like to bring this up, Amy, but somebody tells me, I think it's James, our producer, that you were a career criminal back in the day. Is this true? Let's just put this to bed.
Okay, it's semi-true. Career criminal.
Semi-true.
Semi-true. Okay. I did get issued a summons.
Okay.
I was a bartender briefly. And I had to do community service for a day. I was issued a summons because there was a sting operation at a bar that I was working in as a bartender. And I served someone underage. The legal drinking age is 21.
21, yeah.
And it was super busy. I didn't look for his license. Next thing I know, I saw a cop flashing his badge. And I thought, oh my God, don't you have criminals to arrest, not me?
Proper criminals. But
Proper criminals.
We believe in second chances here on GB News, especially on this channel. This is why we've got you behind the bar, even though you've got a dodgy past. You put that to bed, haven't you?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about Rachel Reeves' spending review, and the mailmogs have come in, and they're pretty fierce towards Rachel Reeves. Julie says she's clearly just making it up as she goes along. The question is how long she will last before she's given her marching orders. And Mark says every Labour government has left office with unemployment up. We will have fewer people paying even more taxes, and still it won't be enough. This lot simply don't know what they're doing. Student politics, virtue signalling and ideology, while the working people pay. Earlier today, the United Kingdom came to an agreement with the European Union over the future status of Gibraltar. After 4 years of negotiations, the deal will avoid the need for border checks on people and goods crossing the Gibraltar and Spain border. However, as always, there's a catch. Travellers arriving at Gibraltar's airport will have to show their passports to Spanish border guards, which some claim hands control of the Gibraltarian border to the EU. The proponents of this deal insist that it's the same system that's in place for the Eurostar in London, which isn't quite true, and the Foreign Secretary has claimed the deal safeguards sovereignty, jobs and growth. But then He thinks Donald Trump and I are Nazis, so don't listen to him very much. But we're now joined, I'm delighted to say, by the party leader of Together Gibraltar, Nick Calamaro. Oh, Mr. Calamaro, very many thanks for joining me. What do you think of what you've seen of this deal so far?
Hi, Jacob. Thank you very much for your time. First of all, I want to actually go back slightly to some of the language you used to describe this. You've called it a Brexit betrayal, but actually this hasn't been 4 years of negotiation. It's been 9 years of negotiation. Gibraltar was forced out of the EU when 96% of Gibraltarians voted to actually, and we were left out of the agreement signed by Boris Johnson's government, by your government, which left Gibraltar with no deal whatsoever. We were left out of the Northern Ireland Protocol. There was no Gibraltar Protocol. So this deal ultimately is Gibraltar having to fend for itself in a way and find its own way to navigate our relationship with the EU and with Spain, with whom we have 15,000 workers coming in per day.
OK, but it seems to me you left the European Union because the people of the UK voted to leave the European Union, and I thought Gibraltar wanted to be part of the UK. You've had a referendum on that as well.
Precisely. But we can't ignore the reality.
But you still want to remain part of the UK?
Of course.
So there's no good moaning about the Brexit deal if you want to remain part of the UK. You can't have it both ways.
Well, I think in many ways, people in the UK have been insulated from the effects of Brexit, many only starting to be felt now. But in Gibraltar, this was felt
overnight. It gets better and better, being free from the mad regulations of the European Union. Every day and every way it gets better and better. It's glorious. We're free from those terrible bureaucrats.
Unfortunately, we won't have to disagree on that one. But the reality is, in Gibraltar, you have not just economic factors in terms of the people coming into work, the reliance on passporting into the EU market, but also just the cultural factors of families living on opposite sides of the border who were being faced with passport checks and possibly hours of wait just to see their family members, something that my parents lived through during the Franco regime, when they were separated from their families. And this is something that was instituted by a dictatorship in which we were risking seeing being forced upon us.
And then the European dictatorship was thinking of doing the same thing. Unelected, undemocratic EU being just as bad as Franco.
Well, we definitely have to disagree on that one too. But the thing is, Gibraltar has had to carve its own way, and we don't want to give up our British heritage, our sovereignty, and the right to determine our future. But at the same time, we have to push where we are in the world geographically, but also culturally, the ties we have with our closest neighbour, with our European friends, and the rights which were stripped from us when we lost our European citizenship, because we weren't just British citizens, we were European citizens. And that's something that I know many people...
You could join Spain if you want to be. If you want to be European citizens, you can join Spain. You seem to want to have it both ways. Do you want to be British or not? Because if you're British, you have to have the bits you don't like.
Well, in many ways, it's quite a tragic irony of Brexit, because Britain did have its own way in many ways. It wasn't forced to join the euro. It wasn't forced to join Schengen. And now in many finds itself joining this Schengen-style arrangement because the UK chose to leave and Gibraltar just was not in a position where that was feasible for us, either economically, culturally, or simply geographically.
You're part of the United Kingdom. Your crown dependency, as you've voted to be. That's the bit I don't understand. You want to seem to eat your cake and have it.
Well, unfortunately, it's about the survival of the people here, about creating jobs, creating prosperity. We had similar issues with the UK during the Thatcher era when the dockyard was closed, decimating the Gibraltar's biggest industry, and we had to reinvent ourselves. This, in many ways, is
which you've done extraordinarily well by being an independent part of the British Crown and not subject to the full rigour of the European Union. It's been a huge opportunity for you. Your financial service has done incredibly well on this.
It has, but at the same time, Gibraltar doesn't want to go down the road of Malta. We want to be a regulated jurisdiction. We want to attract good, honest business, and we can't do that while turning our back on our neighbour and our closest ally in Spain and the EU.
OK, because I know the Spanish are very worried about some of the smuggling things that go on, but smuggling goes on all around the world, so I'm not sure that's a particularly Gibraltarian problem.
Well, it's something we have to touch on, because a lot of the language that has been used about this has been talking about boots on the ground, which won't actually be on Gibraltarian soil, so that thankfully a solution has been found to that maintains Gibraltar's sovereignty. But we have to remember Spain is a NATO member. We're talking about allied nations here who should be working together to combat smuggling, to combat terrorism, to combat money laundering. And so it's something that it's very sad in a way that the UK has in many ways decided to turn its back on its closest
No, it's not.
ally.
It's glorious. It's absolutely wonderful that we're free from the jackboot of Europe. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Calamari, for joining me. I've now got my wonderful panel with me, the Reform press spokesman Gawain Towner and the former Labour advisor Stella Santikide. Stella, we want to maintain Gibraltarians' rights to be British, but it does seem that they don't seem to want to be so British anymore.
No, they absolutely do. Look, when I used to work for Emily Thornberry, when she was Shadow Foreign Secretary, I went with her to Gibraltar. It was her first official visit to the government of Gibraltar. And the government there was extremely worried about whether they will be able to continue having both the relationship with the UK, but also with Europe, because of how important it is for the local economy, as we just heard. And this deal has been in the making for a very long time. So they've had a very long time to iron out the details. And you can say whatever you want about what it sounds like to people who think Brexit is a vibe more than it is actual facts and details, because the details are always a lot less glamorous and a lot less practical. But the Gibraltar government wants that and needs that, and they have the Gibraltar people with them.
When is it going to be the case, as far as you understand it from this deal, that one of His Majesty's subjects arriving in Gibraltar will have his passport stamped by a foreign agent?
It does seem to me that if I was to fly to Gib, I would have a Spanish passport check just to go to Gibraltar, even if I was only coming back to the UK afterwards. And that's what it reads as. Now, I haven't read these fine detail, but I think some of the things... I've been on a anti-customs, anti-smuggling cutter around Gibraltar. I was a candidate in the European elections for Gibraltar, and I've been there many times campaigning and since. And whilst clearly 96% voted to remain, that is true, but 97 or 99% voted to stay in the UK a few years earlier. So I think that there is that difficulty that you mentioned. But the 15,000 people from La Linea who come across the border every day, while I was there, the Spanish kept on putting barriers up to harm their own people in order to bully Gibraltarians. It is interesting, you look at the flight plan of David Lammy to Gibraltar today. It missed Spain. Why? Because our great NATO ally has made it very problematic for British flights to fly from the UK to Gibraltar. Why? Because they wish to bully us and bully the Gibraltarians. So, yes, that deal has been signed. Yes, it has been a long time in the offing. But this is a deal that has been pushed and pushed and pushed through bullying, through threats, through literal blocking of the border. Not Franco, our democratic EU neighbour, blocking the border, damaging their own people, making it harder for them to work. Now, when I see a Spanish foreign minister grinning like the Cheshire Cat over a deal over Gibraltar, frankly, I need to read that small print and the shadow small print that may well be there as well. I don't trust this government on foreign affairs. I do not trust this government when it deals with UK sovereign territory such as the Chagos. I do not trust this government in this deal.
Its record is terrible. That Chagos is quite extraordinary to pay a foreign country to take over British territory. The reset
and fund their tax cuts, I see.
And fund their tax cuts. And put our taxes up at the same point. The reset with the EU is a surrender. So they're starting from a pretty low point of trust.
It may be the most brilliant deal in the world. But if I see the Spanish Foreign Minister smiling and David Lammy's fingerprints on it, I don't trust it.
That seems a pretty good argument against it, doesn't
Why
it?
has the Conservative government not done the deal earlier then? Why did they need to wait for Labour to be in power to sign this?
Because they
were fighting back against Spanish bullying.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and why did they not achieve to do anything? You know what, you say Spanish bullying, but any negotiation, you have to remember, has to do with the power of the players. What has the Conservative government done to completely lose all of the British power? What is it about the Conservative government of the last 5 years...
I do not hold a candle for the Conservative government.
I know you don't, but let me ask this question again. Why is it that the UK is in a situation where our long-time allies, who by any means across the world right now should be our closest allies strategically and in all other ways...
Why should they be strategically close when the Germans were thought so unlikely to allow armaments to be flown from the UK to Ukraine that we didn't even ask them to fly over their airspace in 2022? The idea that these people are all on our side
Spain
is not
has supported
realistic.
Argentina on the Falkland Islands. These are not our closest allies.
Okay,
we happen to be doing deals with them in Europe, and we happen to be NATO members. They are not our closest allies.
Okay, so you think so your foreign policy would be that we're going to be isolated on our little island?
No, we pick allies when we need them for particular things. We have no perpetual allies.
We have interests.
Perpetual interests, as Palmerston pointed out, after all, a Liberal Prime Minister. So, ending with me quoting a Liberal Prime Minister. O tempora, o mores. Anyway, thank you to Nick, Gawain and Stella. Shortly, the government will repeal, apparently, the 200-year-old Vagrancy Act and decriminalise rough sleeping. Is this really a sensible idea? I'll be joined by the founder of the Mancunian Way, Nick Buckley.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
The heat and humidity in Spain might just trigger one or two heavy thundery showers. Heat is also building in Italy. Sunny in Greece, not too hot here though, because the winds are coming down from the north. Very small chance of a heavy shower breaking out over Croatia, but generally the weather's set fair here. Inland over Italy, also potentially there may be one or two heavy downpours. It's fine, it's dry, it's sunny in the Canaries. That will continue for the next few days, and the temperatures in Rome sticking in the mid-30s into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's been a warm and humid day today. That'll continue tonight and tomorrow, and the humidity sparking some thunderstorms in places too. Down to the southwest, that's where we're looking overnight tonight. Most of us having a dry night. The breeze will be picking up, but down to the southwest, thunderstorms spreading into southwest England, parts of South Wales by morning time. You could get woken up by a rumble of thunder here, if you can sleep, that is, because it will be quite a warm and sticky night in the southwest. Towns and cities holding up in the mid-teens. It's got a warm start to Thursday everywhere. Hazy sunshine for many to begin with across Scotland, northern England to eastern England, but down to the southwest, these thunderstorms dropping a lot of rain in a short space of time. Not great for the morning commute. Could be some hazards on the roads. Those thunderstorms extending into parts of Wales and then through the day into Northern Ireland. So we do have Met Office yellow warnings in place for those thunderstorms. Most of Scotland, though, starting dry and fine, perhaps a little misty along some coast. That breeze will be quite noticeable, getting quite gusty at times across eastern areas and also close to these heavy downpours. Could see some of them developing across southeast England. Heaviest ones likely further west, but then come the afternoon, if skies brighten, we may well spark further thunderstorms over parts of the Midlands. Far southwest of England should get a little bit brighter, whereas it stays pretty wet in Northern Ireland. Quite warm and quite humid. With some sunshine, we could again get temperatures into the mid-20s across parts of eastern England. Many places, they're a little bit cooler than that because of the heavy downpours and because of more cloud. Continued risk of thunderstorms during the course of tomorrow evening. Friday looks a little drier to begin with, but still some showers for Northern Ireland and parts of Wales. The threat of more thunderstorms then coming up from the south later on Friday. There's another Met Office yellow warning for that across East Anglia and the southeast. Friday, probably the warmest of this week. We may get to 30 Celsius in the east.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
His Majesty's Government has announced that it will repeal the Vagrancy Act, a law dating back to 1824 that criminalised rough sleeping and begging. announcement comes at a time when rough sleeping is up, public concern is rising, and rather than solve it, they're changing the law to make it look like it's less of a problem. But I wonder, is this really reform or simply a sign they've lost grip on the problem? Well, I'm joined now by the founder of the Mancunian Way, Nick Buckley. Nick, thank you very much for joining me. It does seem, as you go around London, that the amount of rough sleeping has increased enormously. And if you just go along Park Lane, there was a tent city at the northern end, which went a few weeks ago, and it's re-emerged at the southern end. This is something that really ought to be dealt with. It's a problem. And does changing the law in this way really make any difference?
This is a good example of woke social policy. So what they're doing is they're saying, we want to treat people who are living on the streets, we want to treat them slightly better. I want no one sleeping on the streets. It's not addressing the issue. It's addressing the feelings of people who work in the sector of rough sleeping, homelessness, and it's making them feel pink and fluffy, that we're giving people who live on the streets a little bit more dignity, a bit more respect. Forget dignity, forget respect. Let's put all our efforts on ensuring that no one sleeps on the streets in the UK. It's not much. That's not much to ask, is it? We did it during COVID. We housed every rough sleeper during COVID, and we house every illegal immigrant who comes into the country. But we can't house our citizens who are falling through all the nets, safety nets, and ended up on the streets. We just leave them on the streets to live and die. It's a disgrace.
But in central London, Westminster City Council used to be able to find emergency accommodation for people really very quickly and very effectively. And then during COVID, it got even better and they managed to find somewhere for everybody to go. What is underlying the re-emergence of this problem on as big a scale as certainly I can ever remember?
The problem's changed over the last 20 years. The problem now is to do with mass immigration. Many of the people who are rough sleeping now are not British citizens. They're failed asylum seekers, they're people who've got leave to remain. So then the government washes their hands of them, say, you need to sort yourself out now. So they end up on the streets. There's still some indigenous, white, British, working class people, drug addicts, mentally ill, who are on the streets. But they're still in small numbers and they definitely need helping. But now we've got an extension of the migrant crisis. That's what these tent cities are. And if you think you've got a problem in London with tent cities at the moment, wait till this piece of legislation has been removed, because then people can set up tent cities anywhere they want, outside your local Tesco's, outside your house. It'll be like New York, it'll be like LA and San Francisco. Crime will increase. It will be a nightmare.
And the police will have no powers to move people on. And clearly they don't have the right powers already, because I'm absolutely intrigued about the Park Lane tent city. They were able to move it from the north of Park Lane, and it then just popped up at the southern end, which must have some different regulatory position. And you're saying most of these people will be probably illegal immigrants. And so it's a failure of the migration system that is underpinning the explosion in rough sleeping. And so these two problems need to be tackled together. And that requires some criminal law that if you're here illegally, you should be removed.
I'm sure you have this conversation every day with a different guest about the mass immigration problem we have in this country. It doesn't work. It's a complete failure. Too many important people are making far too much money out of the illegal immigration industry, from hotels to security to caterers to hairdressers to private taxi drivers. Too many people are making too much money out of this. But going back to your point on that road, that street where they just moved, happens in Manchester City Centre all the time. Council will spend 6 months, legal fees, hundreds of thousands of pounds to get the court to agree we can evict these tents at this spot. Well, it's just that defined area where they're not allowed to go. So they move 50 metres down the road. The whole process starts all over again. Another £250,000 in solicitors' fees for a council that says we've got no money. And the whole joke continues over and over again. I don't want anyone living on the streets in the UK, not even foreigners, not even illegal immigrants, because it's a stain on the country. It's a stain on us as compassionate people. We need to get people off the streets, not lovely hotels, not lovely one-bedroom flats, but I'm talking about getting people off the streets, into hostels, into campsites, into anything, not living and dying on the streets.
And so how do you think that can be managed? Because the Chancellor announced today that the hotels for asylum seekers will be closed in 2028, 2029. That will create surely further pressure and put more people on the streets. There seems to be no joined-up thinking in government to reduce the number of people who are liable to be sleeping rough, to either provide for them or, if they shouldn't be here, to remove them.
Well, the government will stop using hotels, and we already know what the solution to that is. They're already telling councils, you need to start giving these people council houses, which means if you're a British citizen in the country at the moment waiting for a council house, you ain't got a chance in hell, because homeless migrants will be the top of the list to get council houses and council accommodation, because it saves national government money. That's the driving factor there. It's a chicken and eggs syndrome again. So we'll have migrants who are on the way to this country now because they know, worst case scenario, I end up on the streets. And living on the streets in the UK is so much better than living on the streets in Mogadishu, in Ghana, in Kathmandu. So even though we think it's a bad situation for them, it's better than where they came from. But we can't accept it. So we can set up, if you can imagine like a Butlins camp, set up Butlins camp. That's a bit like a prison, because we don't want these legal immigrants coming and going. It's not a holiday camp, but we need to accommodate them in tents, off the streets. And then the answer is mass deportations. Otherwise, we're playing with this problem all the time.
Well, Donald Trump showed that that's possible. Thank you very much, Nick. Next, the battle of the billionaires is over. Has Elon Musk taken a page from the Farage-Youssef playbook? After a very public political fallout with President Trump, the Tesla tycoon is now eating humble pie.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, this is something of a game of happy families. Has Elon Musk taken inspiration from Nigel Farage and Zia Yusuf's reconciliation? What began as a political romance which saw Elon Musk donating hundreds of millions of dollars to the Donald Trump campaign before he was appointed the head of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, as they used to have in Venice, ended with the Tesla owner accusing the president of being in the Jeffrey Epstein files. But today, he announced on his platform Twitter that it's all sweetness and light once more. He regretted some of his posts about the president and that they went too far. So has he drawn inspiration from the reconciliation between Zia Yusuf and Nigel Farage? Anything Reform can do, the Republicans can do as well. Well, my panel is still with me to discuss this top priority issue facing the nation today. The Reform press spokesman, Gwen Towler, and the former Labour advisor, Stella Santikito. Stella, I'm going to come to you first, because you spread sweetness and light wherever you go. Don't you think this is nice, that they're playing happy families, and now Mr. Tesla is being nice to the president again?
I think the hypocrisy of Elon Musk talking about woke waste or whatever else, when the only reason why he's acting the way he does right now is because his businesses are entirely supported by government subsidies. And what he's seeing now is he's realizing, oh my God, I made the man-child that we have for president angry, and now he's going to stop having me as his favorite child. And obviously, his business is going to suffer from this, and obviously he's going to have all of his colleagues or whoever actually talks to him honestly, telling him, what are you doing?
And the big, beautiful bill is going to take a lot of money away from Tesla, isn't it? Or from the subsidies to
yes,
Musk.
And this is why he attacked him in the first place. And what the... regardless of, obviously, you can imagine my opinion on Donald Trump. But to be an ally of Donald Trump and to basically accuse him of being in cahoots with a pedophile ring.
Yeah, that's quite tough. Not quite as... it makes the Zia Yusuf and Nigel
apart from anything else,
row.
There was never a falling out between Zia and Nigel. So it's not about making good.
No, Zia was quite punchy about Nigel, saying he'd wasted his year helping him, and he
didn't say he'd wasted a year. He says, it's no longer a good use of my time
to get him elected. That's quite tough.
I think it was...
You've never said anything tough like that about Nigel, have you?
I've never said anything public like that at all, no.
No, quite.
But no, basically there wasn't a falling out. There wasn't that sort of allegation. It was a very gentle thing, and it was solved within 48 hours.
Nest of singing birds.
Well, more to the point, well, actually, yes. It's all now Zia's doing, given the role he's doing, it's all clearly suits him. Yesterday, or the day before yesterday, we saw him make his speech, best speech I've ever made.
We know that Nigel and Trump are friends. We know that Nigel's used to be friendly with Elon Musk as well.
They met twice, yeah.
Have they learned from the master? Is that what it is that they have seen?
Elon has looked on Twitter and seen his follow me list. He's seen that there's been a reconciliation at Twitter at Reform Towers, and Bob's your uncle. No, I don't think so. I think Stella's entirely right. This is all about money.
I just think Britain's leading the world once again. Anyway, before we leave you, I want to turn to this story, which is of equal importance because it could have come from a fantasy novel. The treasures from the Spanish galleon, the San Jose, have been discovered off the coast of Colombia. It's believed that the shipwreck could be carrying up to £16 billion worth of treasure. And it may be ours, because I think we sank the San Jose. So I think we should put in a claim to say that it's British treasure. And I think that Rachel Reeves might find it quite useful to find £16 billion. Perhaps there is some wreck off the coast of Dover she could dig up. Anyway, now that is enough from me. I'll be back tomorrow, but I can hand you over to the one and only Patrick Christys, who I hope is going to tell you, among other things, about how glorious the weather is going to be in Somerset and indeed at Lord's tomorrow.
Absolutely tremendous show, Jacob. Thank you very, very much. OK, so Sir Keir Starmer talks about smashing the gangs. Here at GB News, we have actually gone and done it. Take a look at this.
طقس ربي يبارك ها شو رايك وجمعة وراحات شوف ما شاء الله شوف الأجواء.
I infiltrated an illegal migrant gang. We got their phone numbers, their locations, their plans. We even got some of them on audio tape. We've handed that over to the authorities in Britain and in France. It's now over to them to act. We've shown them right up. That is how easy it is to do to smash the gangs. Also, of course, 11 p.m. until midnight is Patrick Christie's Tonight Late Edition for a first look at a fiery set of front pages. But now it's your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's been a warm and humid day today. That'll continue tonight and tomorrow, and the humidity sparking some thunderstorms in places too. Down to the southwest, that's where we're looking overnight tonight. Most of us having a dry night. The breeze will be picking up, but down to the southwest, thunderstorms spreading into southwest England, parts of South Wales by morning time. You could get woken up by a rumble of thunder here, if you can sleep, that is, because it will be quite a warm and sticky night in the southwest. Towns and cities holding